Hello, hello. Thank you for tapping in. So, we're just about done with First Samuel. And I was just sitting here finishing up chapter 30 of First Samuel. And it's an interesting chapter. It's interesting what he does, actually. So let's start with the Amalekites had raided Negev and Ziglag and overthrown Ziglag and burned it with fire and taken all the children and spoils and wives and women and everything captive, while David was off with the commanders and the Philistines. Okay, this is when David, remember we had read or said earlier yesterday, I think it was, about Achish and saying, hey man, the commanders don't want you here. You're going to have to go back. You can't fight with us because they're scared you're going to take their heads off and give them back to Saul and then win your status back. So he was going back to the city which Achish gave him, which was Ziklag. Now, obviously his wives were there, and all the men's wives were there, the children were there, their spoils, cattle, ox, donkeys, everything was there. Well, the Amalekites came in, raided them, burnt the city to fire, okay, burned them all up, took all the spoil, all the cattle, everything, all the women and children. They didn't kill anybody, but they took them captive and went on. Okay? Now, David, when they got home, and the men, it says in verse 4, that David and the people who were with him lifted their voices and wept until there was no strength in them to weep. Weeping so much and crying so much that they didn't have any more strength to do so. Their women, their wives, their cattle, the spoil, everything was gone. The city was burned up. They didn't know if anybody was even left, right? So, verse 6, David was greatly distressed because the people spoke of stoning him. They were embittered toward him because of his sons and his daughters. They were all gone. But David strengthened himself in the Lord his God. Okay? So I'm sure that he prayed to the Lord. Matter of fact, verse 8 says, he inquired of the Lord, saying, shall I pursue this band? Shall I overtake them? And he said to him, pursue, for you will surely overtake them, and you will surely rescue all. So, God was saying that, yes, you need to pursue them. Yes, you will overtake them. And yes, you will rescue everybody, everything, all of it. So that right there tells David, everybody's still alive. Okay? Now, from this faith, because he'd already been doing things God had been telling him to anyway, right? He takes 600 men. David went, 600 men. They went. They made it to the brook Besor. In verse 10, it says, David pursued further with 400 men because 200 were too exhausted to carry on. So they stayed. They didn't cross the brook. They didn't cross Besor and pursue with David and the other 400. So just David and 400 left. Now, remember, he left with 600. Now he's 200 less. He's about to go fight the Amalekites. Okay? Very important. Remember, 200 of them stayed behind. Okay? Now, luckily, David and the men ran across this Egyptian. They gave him some food and water to drink, and they found out he was left behind by his master, who was an Amalekite, because he'd gotten sick 3 days before. And so they fed him and watered him, and David said, hey, will you take me to this band? And in verse 15, the guy goes, yes, as long as you promise you won't kill me or hand me over to the master. If you'll promise that, then yes, I'll take you to the band. I'll take you to the group. I'll take you where they're at. So he promises, and boom. Okay, when David gets there, verse 16, when he had brought him down, behold, they were spread all over the land, eating and drinking and dancing because of all the great spoil that they had taken from the land of the Philistines and from the land of Judah. This is typical of the enemy. The enemy wins something, and all of a sudden he's going to have everybody dancing and joy and reveling and drinking and having fun over their winning. And honestly, the enemy knew David was pursuing because they're spiritual beings, right? Now, the people didn't, but the enemy in the spiritual world did. The wickedness in high places knew because he could see what was going on. Didn't even warn the Amalekites. Nothing came to the Amalekites. No diviners, no nothing came to them and said, hey, man, you might want to gird yourself up. Check it out. Here's what's going to happen. No, the enemy just let them get ran over by David, because verse 17, David slaughtered them From the twilight until the evening of the next day, not a man of them escaped, except for 400 young men who rode on camels and fled. Now here's where it gets good. This is something for us to learn. David's a great example, I'm telling you. He recovered all, rescued his 2 wives, nothing was missing, no son, no daughter, nothing small nor great, no spoil or anything. David brought it all back, per the word of the Lord, right? Brought it all back. Now, when David came to the brook, back to the brook, Besor, came to the 200 men who were too exhausted to follow David, who had also been left at the brook. And they went out to meet David and to meet the people who were with him. And then David approached the people and greeted them. So here we have the 200 men that were too exhausted to go, met David, when they came back, David went out to approach them and greeted them as well. Then all the wicked and worthless men among those who went with David, okay, because they did not go with us, we will not give them any of the spoil that we have recovered, except to every man his wife and his children, that they may lead them away and depart. So the wicked and worthless men, they were concerned about themselves only. They didn't care about the 200. They didn't go fight with them. They weren't going to give them any of the spoil back, just their wives and their sons, and then tell them to leave. They were not welcome anymore. Okay? This is the heathen mindset in action. All right? And if you've been following it all on our Wednesday study series at Wednesday night at the church, that we're talking about the heathen mind and how we need to convert ourselves into the mind of Christ by being sanctified by the Holy Spirit. So we move from heathen mind to carnal to spirit to the mind of Christ. Okay? Right here is an example of what the heathen mind does. It's only concerned about yourself. And if somebody did not fulfill the standard you think they ought to fulfill, then you don't give them anything. That's what this is right here. That's what they're doing. Right? They're saying, man, you weren't good enough to go with us. You were too tired to run with the rest of us did. We were tired too, but we went. But because you didn't, you can't have nothing. Well, now, verse 23, David says, you must not do so, my brothers, with what the Lord has given us, who has kept us and delivered into our hand the band that came against us. And who will listen to you in this matter? For as his share is who goes down to the battle, so shall his share be who stays by the baggage. They shall share alike. Okay? So David says equal shares for everybody, whether they went to the battle or whether they stayed behind and couldn't go to the battle, they're going to get equal shares of the spoil. That is having grace and mercy and integrity and fair division of everything, so everybody has the same equal, right? What happens in the New Testament church when the new covenant comes in, right? All of the new Christians, all the people in the new church had divided their stuff equally among each other, sold it, and then divided everything among everybody, so nobody was lacking. Everybody had the same share alike. This right here is like a preemptive thing, like a foreshadowing of what we're supposed to be doing in the New Testament as well with our brothers and sisters. It doesn't matter if they've gone along with us or not. If they've been too tired to move forward, but we know their heart, we know they're part of us, then we need to make sure that they share equally with us in everything that God has given us in our victory. That right there is powerful, strong right there. So it has been from that day forward that he made it a statute and an ordinance for Israel to this day. And then it finishes out, and then, of course, in 31, Saul gets overtaken by the Philistines and kills himself because he doesn't want to get taken over by them, to be made sport of. His sons die, the armor bearer dies, and then that's the end of King Saul in 31. And that's the end of 1 Samuel. We'll be starting 2 Samuel. I'll be starting to read it tomorrow, or maybe tonight later. I don't know. But this is powerful, though. Equal shares for everybody. This right here, what David did, I'm telling you, is a foreshadow of what the apostles and the early church were doing. You know, whether they were part of anything or not, together, they shared together. They lived together. They were among one another, fellowshipping and sharing life, and they shared everyone's possessions. Nobody was lacking anything. Powerful example right there. I'm telling you, David's a great example of stuff to live by. Now, as we get into 2 Samuel, there's going to be a lot of other things I'm sure that we're going to learn from many of the stories of David. A lot of us know his stories. So, all right, guys. Equal shares for everyone. Yeah, equal shares for everyone. All right. Well, Lord willing, I will see you on the next video, guys. You'll have a great night. I'm going to break off here and get ready and finish studying up for tonight's Bible study. Remember, if you can make it, I'd love to see you there. Talk to you soon. Lord willing, I'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.